Hey everybody, it's Kristen here with your Monday Motivational. First, I want to tell you all how pleased I am with the work you've been doing in the discussion forums. I've been very impressed with the thoughtfulness that you've displayed as you're talking about the text, and I really appreciate that y'all are willing to jump right into looking at these unfamiliar texts. So great job with that. By the end of this Sunday, you probably felt like old hats. And I'd also like to point out that the beginning is super intense in this class because we are reading shorter texts, so you do have a lot more forum posts, but those forum posts actually reduce as you go along. If you've had a look at the schedule, you'll see you'll have kind of like bigger writing assignments and fewer short ones. So one thing I want to focus your attention on is the claim formula. This is an essential analytical tool for our class as we work to analyze literature. I've had you practice it a couple of times, so you've used it in the discussion post 1 on the Epic of Gilgamesh, and you've also used it in BB1, which was the close reading assignment. So you've already had a little bit of practice. Just to reiterate, the claim formula is what the text is doing plus how that thing affects the reader's understanding of the text. And I've got a kind of detailed breakdown coming for you, so I'm going to be looking at my transcript kind of frequently to make sure I don't go off track or leave anything out for you. This formula asks you to think about two particular aspects of each text that you're looking at. So first is the what. What is the text doing? The second thing is how. How does the text impact the reader? Most of us read and learn in two different ways when it comes to looking at this type of literary study. I am a detail person. So I notice things that are weird to me or that jump out or I don't understand why they're happening. So something like, why is Enkidu cursing a door? That seems really weird. It seems much more reasonable to me for Gilgamesh to curse Ishtar than for Enkidu to curse a door, right? So little things like that bother me. Or why do Humbaba's glories seem like they're little chicks, like baby chickens running around? And I don't understand what these glories are supposed to be, even though in the grand scheme of the text, that's not really necessarily that important. But I'm a detail person. That's the kind of thing that I notice. And that's the what part of the text. But someone like me who focuses on details might have a harder time with the big picture aspect of the text. So it might be more difficult for me to recognize something like Gilgamesh's failure to attain immortality shows that he has to establish a legacy that will allow his name to live on because he can't personally live on. And that's a big picture idea. That's the how part of the claim formula. So for some of you, that how part will come more easily than the what part. So even though I've written the claim formula as what the text is doing plus how that thing affects the reader's understanding of the text, just start with whatever's easiest for you. I always recommend beginning with what is easiest. That's a great way to avoid burnout, to help you avoid getting frustrated with the process if you just start with what you know. So if you're the type of person that reads something and immediately has an interpretation, that's great. You should write that down. That's your how. That's the how part of the claim formula. If, on the other hand, you're more of a detail person, write those details down because those are going to be the what part of the claim formula. The hard part is usually figuring out the other part. So if you've got these details, trying to figure out what those details do to your understanding of the text, or if you've got this big idea, if you've got this interpretation, figuring out how you arrived at that interpretation, like what detailed parts of the text led you there. Those can be hard to track down. So just be patient with yourself. Know that one part of this is going to probably feel easier than the other part, and that's perfectly normal. Let's see. Oh, and the claim formula is actually going to be really essential to the next major assignment you have coming up, which is BB2. This is the formal paragraph for paper 1. I call it formal because I want it to be extremely polished. So this paragraph should be the best kind of writing that you could do. It should be something like what you would turn in for a final draft of a paper, even though it's only a paragraph. These building blocks, so you've done BB1, you're about to do BB2, there's a BB3 and BB4. These building blocks are a way to guide you into the type of writing and the type of analysis that I'm looking for in this class without you just kind of being thrown into the big papers and having no idea what I'm expecting or what you're supposed to do. So this formal paragraph is a key component towards getting to your first paper draft. So let's see, details of that. Oh, right, and the reason I want it to be so polished, the formal paragraph, is because it's an opportunity for me to see what you see as an argument, what you see as your best work, and for me to then offer suggestions that you can incorporate into your longer paper, including the final draft, so that you and I are on the same page about what you're doing with your literary analysis. So, details also include that the formal paragraph should be a body paragraph that responds to one of the prompts in paper 2. And you will find the prompt for paper 1, not for paper 2. And you'll find the prompt for paper 1 linked in the assignment of BB2. So that should be pretty easy to find. And it's posted on Canvas. Note that the formal paragraph cannot be an introductory paragraph. This is essential. So if you give me an introduction instead of a body paragraph, you have not done the assignment. If you're one of those people that you need to write your introduction before you can write your body paragraph, that's fine. Write your introduction, then write your body paragraph, and only give me the body paragraph. Just keep the introduction to yourself. Again, this is so that I can evaluate your analysis and your argumentation. So the core idea that you need to understand for the formal paragraph is the 3 elements of argumentation. This is claim, evidence, and explanation. In the formal paragraph, you will need to include all 3 of these elements, and honestly, every sentence in your formal paragraph should be one of these 3 types of sentences. So as you're going through and color coding them, if you have any that you can't color code, I want you to think very carefully about what that sentence is doing in the paragraph. If you can't color code it, then it might not belong in the paragraph at all. So the first thing that you'll need in your paragraph is a claim, a statement of your opinion. And this is actually where you're going to use the claim formula. So you've had a good bit of practice with this, and I've just talked a good bit about how to do a claim formula. So that's your first step. The next step is providing evidence. Evidence is fact. It is not opinion at all. So the blue portion, so you'll color code your evidence blue, it should only be fact. It should have no opinion in it at all. The best way to provide evidence in literary analysis is to quote directly from the text. I prefer quoting to summarizing and paraphrasing, and I can get into why I prefer those later in the course, but for now, just start with that. Start with trying to make all of your evidence quotations from the text. And then the third element of argumentation is explanation. You will need to explain how the evidence supports your claims. What is it about those pieces of the text that you're showing your reader that led you to that argumentative claim that you made? That's what you've got to explain. A good way to check and see if you need more explanation is to see if you have any assumptions. For example, and some of these assumptions you might not even realize that they're assumptions. So, for example, let's say you've made an analysis based on the idea that white means good and black means evil. Okay, sure, there are a lot of cultural things that will agree with you, but let's say I personally, as one of your readers, think that black means good and white means evil. See, those are both opinions, right? I know, it's kind of mind-blowing. But so what you want to do is actually base your analysis on facts. If you want to say something is good or evil in the text, then you want to show how the text shows it to be good or evil. For instance, if we talk about Ninsun, Gilgamesh's mother, she's called the good and the wise, and she's a cow. That tells us that we could make a strong argument that cows are good in the Epic of Gilgamesh. They're not like evil creatures, because there's this character who is consistently described as both wise and good, and also a cow. That's the kind of analysis that you want to be able to do. So anyway, this can be the hardest part of the argumentation. So don't stress out, just give it a try. You'll have lots of practice throughout the semester. I do strongly recommend that you look at both the sample formal paragraph that I've provided in the prompt for BB2 and also the explaining your logic resource that's in BB2. They'll both show you, the sample formal paragraph will show you an overview of exactly what I'm looking for in your formal paragraph, and then the explaining your logic one will break down those levels of argumentation and figuring out if you've made assumptions that I've just given you a brief overview of. Okay, the last thing I want to introduce you to is the receptions project. So at the end of this week, you'll have your first reception post. So this project will ask you to find and discuss pop culture receptions of the figures that we are encountering throughout our text during the course. And the purpose of this ongoing project is to help you reflect on how the divine and the diabolical figures in the text that we have read show up in our modern culture. And doing this will help you understand how our culture relates to the cultures revealed in the text that we read. So a lot of you are probably familiar with Thor, Loki, these characters that are in modern Marvel movies and or in some of their standalone movies. You'll see that we're going to watch the Avengers. Well, funny thing is, at the end of this week, we're actually going to be reading one of the source texts. So one of the texts where we get a lot of our information about who are these guys, who's Thor, who's Loki, who's Odin. So we're going to be investigating what are those relationships between these cultures that are producing these texts that sort of define the divine and the diabolical, and then how our modern culture receives or reinterprets those ideas of the divine and diabolical. The receptions project requires you to search for receptions or reinterpretations of the divine and the diabolical that we encounter in each unit. So the one you'll be doing at the end of this week is for Unit 1 only. So you'll choose from Unit 1. At the conclusion of each of the 3 units, you will choose one reception of one of the figures from one of the texts in the unit, and you'll compose a reflection about it. You should compare the reception character that you choose. So the reception character will be someone from modern pop culture. That can be modern literature, poetry, music, movies, TV, comic strips, graphic novels, any kind of modern cultural production. So anyway, you'll compare that reception character that you've chosen to a character from the correct unit from the syllabus, and then you'll write a short reflection that's between 100 and 250 words on how comparing the 2 characters helps audiences understand something about the cultures that produce them, including what it can tell you about what the cultures value and what the cultures abhor. There are full instructions on our course website. In fact, on the home page, you'll see a link for Receptions Project. I encourage you to read through those completely before you write your first reception, and also have a look at the examples that I've posted within those instructions, because you'll see what past students have done, and that has gone over really well, has been very successful. Okay, and finally, man, this feels like a long video. You'll be moving on from our ancient unit to our middle unit this week, so you'll see a noticeable difference in the style of the text that we're reading. And thinking about these differences might help you articulate some of the concepts that you want to talk about in your Unit 1 reception post. So keep up the good work, and as always, email me or post in the Q&A forum if you have any questions. Have an awesome week, y'all.